Hello, welcome to Dissident Canada. This is Tyler. And boy, oh boy, there are some interesting things happening. Mostly geopolitical and some ramifications of those geopolitical things. Uh, the multipolar world is very much alive and being brought forth as we speak. There is the meeting that's going on in, what is it, China, between the Russian, Chinese, and Indians, where they seem to be getting along very well with each other and have made some interesting moves. And it's all because of Trump. Trump, I don't know if I'm going to be critical or praise it, because it's extremely interesting if you go either way. Like, if you look at it from the dominance of the current global order, and Trump trying to reclaim top dog as hegemon, not having to be subservient to, foreign globalist machinations. He's pushed he's created a bipolar world in which you are going to have those that will be subservient to the United States and its whims, and those that will work with the Chinese, the Russians, and what appear to be the Indians going forward in a bilateral, well, I guess trilateral, agreement of basically the anti Entente. And it's extremely interesting because it allows the United States to pull back and focus on its sphere of influence without having to go around the world and, police everybody. You create two global orders, which, it's interesting. It stops the overextending problem that America's had for a long time now. Uh, but like, people are mistaking what BRICS is doing as like an actual viable challenge to the dollar. It's still not that. Like, you've got more countries wanting to join BRICS. You've got BRICS, you know, growing in trade, but it's really not a dollar challenge. Even though they are starting to understand what they have to do to actually challenge the dollar, they're building payment systems that work around it. They're building clearinghouses and all that. Uh, they're building the network out, but it's still not a challenge to dollar dominance for a whole hell of a lot of reasons. One of them being is the way the monetary system works is that you have a base layer of money that is not what we would consider money. Like, it's not, you know, paper currency. That is old school thinking. It's not digital currency. It is, because we're in a debt based system, it is collateral. And right now, the best collateral there is still U.S. government bonds. And to the people who think, oh no, the dollar's going to die, rah, 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 bonds are going to crash, go fucking look at the yield curve. Go look at, you know, any bond over time. Yields have been going down. Now, they may start ticking up again, but that'll be for different reasons. Um, there are massive amounts of buying of bonds. All right. In this scenario where bonds start to over time tick back up, it's because the secondary market will be selling them at a rapid pace to obtain dollars immediately, instead of doing all the collateral shenanigans that people do. And banks will continue to do this. But back to my point of BRICS, they're not making a play for the global base layer of money. They can't. They are fundamentally untrustworthy countries with their capital controls. Um, I mean, all countries are untrustworthy, but what I'm talking about is specifically the freedom of money movement. It's too highly regulated and controlled. They cannot actually make a dominance play for the dollar that way. So you've got this BRICS challenger, but again, it's mostly a political group. It's going to it can't make a play for the dollar yet. Maybe in 50 or 100 years. But you'd have to relax capital controls to such a degree that these countries won't give them up, because in doing so, you give up sovereignty. If you allow your currency to become the world reserve currency, um, you have to react to global market forces with the dollar or with your currency and global demand. Otherwise, you get serious freaking problems. Like it's a mutually exclusive thing. You can't have it be the world reserve currency and then not and retain your sovereignty over the currency, because you are reacting to market forces whether you like it or not. So even the Fed does that, like nowadays, like they react to global conditions. If you look at what happened in 2008, the Fed bailed out multiple different countries. All right, they don't tell that story, but that's what happened, and it looks like possibly France might need a bailout at the very least, if not um, the UK as well. Now they'll probably go through the IMF, but the IMF is, you need the Treasury involved to do it. Like the IMF is just a proxy at this point of the Treasury to a certain degree, largely irrelevant to most things, but it is still a way in which the United States attempts to control countries, even though those countries you could just control them through the euro dollar system to a greater extent. Because like IMF loans, you can just say nah, or pay back in hyper devalued your own currency, because the IMF is dumb like that. But anyways, you've got now a political situation where the bear, the elephant, and the dragon are uniting, and they will challenge the United States hegemony. Like they've already done that to a certain extent. That is why you see the globalist crowd and the neocon crowd freak out about Ukraine surrendering, because it's a recognition that they are not all powerful and that they got high on their own supply of BS. So they are going to go like full in on that war as far as they can, which they've been doing. Like that's nothing new. My assessment is still that ends in blood and not in peace. And will the world be better for it? I don't know. But you see the world drawing lines. Like even look at Donald Trump. This is why I think there is more going on with the Trump presidency than most people take at surface value, because he keeps aligning himself with the West in general. When he could make a deal with the Russians, he could come to terms with the Indians, he could come to terms with the Chinese to a certain extent. Um, China is a lot more difficult because the Chinese government is just, if you think the Canadian government is insane, the Chinese take it to a new level. Like instead of having good policies and, say, going after businesses that don't pay their workers, which there's massive revolts going on about that in China right now. You don't hear about it. China very good at censoring it. But when you start to have those protests, and there have been many over the last year, they have created these giant white screens that they then place around the protesters and then deal with the protesters behind these screens so that nobody sees what's going on. Uh, the problem is the businesses aren't paying workers. Now, there's reasons why: Eurodollar shenanigans, global finance at its finest, and it's been going on for years now. Like, there are workers that haven't been paid in years. There's workers that haven't been paid in months. It's not just, oh, hey, they're missing every other payday. It's massive. But China is doing its authoritarian thing and is trying to challenge the West. And it's doing so in a myriad of ways that are all varying degrees of unethical and extremely dangerous. Again, I mentioned earlier in the year, there was not one, but two attempts at using a biological weapon inside the United States of some variety. For some reason, it was a virus that would attack a non-native wheat virus, or a strain of a non-native wheat virus that would have most likely decimated U.S. crops. So, extremely dangerous. China is not a good guy. Russia is not a good guy. India is not a good guy. America is not a good guy. There are no good guys. This is geopolitics. But you're setting up this world in which you have two powers. This is very much hearkening back to the days of, well, globally, at least in the West, you have a how should I put this? A powder keg on the scale of the French Revolution growing because of ideologues, not just ideologues. I'm specifically thinking of like France, the UK, Germany, and appears to be growing here in Canada, but it's also growing in Australia as well, in which the mass migration, these mass immigration policies, are finally being challenged by the people. They've had enough. And because these policies are in part being sold as ideological policies instead of what they likely are is economic policies. And the reason I keep coming back to they have to be economic policies is look at the timing of when this starts in relation to the economy and how bad the economy is. Like, if you look at the start of this, really, is you have the mass amnesty or pseudo amnesty that Reagan gave to illegal immigrants in America. That's in the 80s, right? That is well after the peak of manufacturing in the United States, and the economy starts to slide again. It's mostly Eurodollar shenanigans that I've talked about, but you get that. All right, 90s, you have another wave. All right, and then post 2008, when the global financial system breaks, and then you get more of this mass immigration policy. Then again in 2011, when you have the European sovereign debt crisis. And it continues to get worse and worse, the mass immigration, as the economy breaks further and further. So, yes, my opinion is it is an economic reason, not an ideological reason. It's just they don't know how to sell an economic reason to anybody, which it's extremely hard to sell, like, actual economics to anybody and get them to buy in and be like, yeah, this is a great idea. Just look at the deficits of bringing the debt under control, of government debt under control. Everybody you talk to, you can agree that debt is bad. But when it comes to voting, nobody has actually ever successfully won on that topic because nobody gives a flying F about it. At least how it's being sold. Um, anyways, so you've got this global powder keg in the West that very much smells of French revolutionary um, reminiscence of it. It's very similar. You have political turmoil, you have economic turmoil. The number one thing about that caused the French Revolution and many revolutions is economic turmoil. So as that gets worse, and then you have political economics dictates the political shakeup, which, you know, once people get you hit this eventually hit this point of no return, it gets bad. You have that. But you also have post French revolutionary lines being drawn of empires that are dying. And I know we're in a mostly post empire world, but you still have a lot of pseudo empires there and a lot of former empires that wish to reclaim their empires in reality. And they're trying to draw battle lines with the emerging markets because that's where they want to build their empires or rebuild them. Like, do you not think the French want, if they could, to just absolutely take over most of Africa? Same with the British. If the British elite thought they could get away with subjugating, you know, half the world again, they would do it. But they're in no position, and they haven't come to terms that they're not in position with it. I mean, most of the time now they do it with soft power, but if they thought they could do it with, armies and naval power, they would absolutely do it. But you're getting, we were in this period of relative peace for, say, 40 years, and now we're into the growing storm, I would say. What happens on the other side, I have no idea. And this comes to the reason of why I say you could praise Donald Trump for this or not, because he might understand what's happening and preemptively drawing lines, backroom negotiating with the Russians, the Indians, and the Chinese, because most political stuff that's disseminated through the media is just theater. It depends what actually happens and the reasons why. So he could be backing off and making a play to be like, okay, you have your sphere of influence, we have our sphere of influence, and if anything, meets, we do negotiations of some variety. Now, I don't know if that's exactly Trump, because that's definitely not his personality, but you can somewhat understand that perspective. Now, it may be that it's not so peaceful. It is, let's say, a more hot version of what I just described. It would explain why the United States is doubling down on Israel, because they consider that their sphere of influence. It's why they're backing Bibi, why they're backing Ukraine, because again, it's the part of Europe they think they control. And you can see the play in with Panama, of why the United States wants Panama, because it is in their sphere of influence, and why you can see Trump going so hard at Venezuela and Maduro. Okay, you could see that. Now, the third option is, or let's say third likely option, is that Trump has no idea what he's really doing and just throwing shit at the wall, which also is a valid fucking reason. It's why he's trying to play hardball with the Indians when it's just pissing them off and driving them into China. It may not be a plan, it just may be happening. Like, it's the hardest thing with geopolitics is because most of this shit happens behind closed doors. It's extremely hard to analyze because it's basically like looking into the abyss and seeing pure darkness and you're making your own shapes out of the darkness. It's difficult. Now you get hints here and there, and some people who have insider information leak every once in a while. You know, I mean, also there's a fourth explanation of what's going on, especially with the United States. It's a mix of everything. There's, hey, we understand we have to pull back. We understand we have to look strong, so we have to fight for these positions, and and there's parts that we don't understand, so we just have to throw shit at the wall to see what happens. So, but the geopolitical map is very much moving into a at least bipolar world. You may see it into, say, 4 or 5 factions later on. You could have, say, the bear, the elephant, the dragon as a faction. You could have Europe as its own faction with Canada tagging along, sadly. The United States its own faction. South America its own power faction. And Africa being its own small power faction, or maybe even big power faction. You could also see one other power faction rise, and that would be, I don't want to say the Middle East. I want to extend that into Muslim majority countries, because then you get way far out into the east, and then pretty deep into Africa. Like you could see this massive band of just, hey, we're all Muslim. I mean, we may be Sunni or Shia, which they fucking hate each other, but like everybody else hates us more, so let's go in this together. So that's interesting. All right. That's going to be the video for today. Just, a quick rant about the geopolitical mess that's going on and the realignment that really is happening. And it's going to kind of lead into tomorrow on what I think is going on specifically with the play the US is making with stablecoins. It's very interesting when you look at it through the context of the Eurodollar market. So that will be tomorrow, and I don't know what else. At some point, I have to talk about some AI shit that's going on that is hilarious, because like AI is just you've got 2 versions of AI right now. You've got LLMs, and you've got basically Indian slave labor, and both are just terrible at what they produce. But AI could be very good as a tool of censorship, and you're already starting to see that, of controlling the narrative more effectively than any other method I've seen. Like, if you really want to see this, go on to X and find like a controversial topic or post and look at the amount of people that ask Grok, yo, what's up with this? And just watch the AI give a hilariously wrong or short-sighted, I would say, I guess is the best um, take on that. And it's only because it's pulling from authoritative sources. AI is hilarious because at no point are they actually trying to make it artificial intelligence, because there's no decision making capability. It can't discern good information from bad information. It can't make that choice itself. It relies on people, and nobody's trying to actually teach it how to think. It just spits out data. It's not intelligent. When it becomes intelligent, then you've got a problem. Which is a topic for another day. So, until the next video, have a good day.